for terrifying true spring break horror stories that will haunt your nights. I never should have opened that door. The moment my fingers grazed the cold metal handle, a chill crawled up my spine. Shadows seemed to whisper behind me, their secrets heavy with dread. I was just a college student looking for an escape, a break from finals, nothing more. But here I was, standing at the threshold of something dark and twisted. The sun had barely set that evening. I slipped into my beach house, pink and bright, the last rays of daylight spilling onto the sand like melted gold. My friends had already claimed their spots, reveling in laughter, the air thick with salty breezes and the clinking of drinks. But something felt off. The atmosphere shifted, like a wave retreating from the shore, leaving an uneasy silence in its wake. Then the knocking began. Gentle at first, but as the laughter faded, it grew louder, echoing through the empty rooms. I felt the walls close in, the cold bite of fear sending prickles across my skin. Was someone out there? I peered through the grimy window, my heart racing. Nothing but darkness met my gaze. Strange, I thought. Where had everyone gone? Without thinking, curiosity tugged at me. I moved toward the door. With each step, shadows danced in the corner of my eye, flickering like candles. My stomach twisted. I gripped the handle, hesitation battling with a strange compulsion. The knocking had morphed into scratching, an urgent plea clawing at my mind. A voice whispered, was it strange? Familiar? The words weren't clear, just echoes of dread. That I opened the door. The creaking hinges shattered the stillness. My breath caught in my throat. Darkness swallowed me whole, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and something sweetly rotten. I ventured outside. The night wrapped around me like a shroud, the stars blinked from above, uncaring. Suddenly, a sharp gust of wind picked up, swirling sand around my feet. I stepped back, heart thundering. And then I saw it. A figure, tall and twisted, emerged from the shadows. My pulse pounded in my ears. Fear held me captive, frozen, unable to scream, unable to run. That it stared back at me, a face obscured in darkness, but I could feel its gaze, drilling into my soul. Where had my friends gone? The silence felt suffocating. I turned to call for help, but a heavy thump echoed behind me, the door slamming shut, severing my last connection to safety. Who's there? I managed to whisper, my voice trembling. But all I heard was the rustle of leaves. And then laughter, soft, sinister. My heart dropped. The figure took a step forward. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Panic ripped through me as the figure emerged further from the darkness. Its silhouette stretched and shifted as if it were made of shadows. My instincts screamed at me to flee, yet the weight of dread anchored my feet to the ground. Each heartbeat thundered in my ears, drowning out my dwindling reason. Stop! I croaked, but the word felt familiar yet alien, slipping from my lips like an incantation I had never meant to utter. Then, from the inky edges of the night, an answer came, a low, guttural sound that could only be a laugh twisted by malice. There was no mistaking it now, the figure morphed into something grotesque. Its limbs elongated unnaturally, knuckles scraping the sandy ground, leaving deep grooves behind, like forgotten trails of nightmares. My body took over, instinctually preparing to run, but my mind was enthralled by the sight, horrified yet transfixed. That I turned to the beach house, hoping against hope that somehow the door had miraculously swung open again. I could see through the shattered glass, fragments reflecting ghostly light as if the very air inside shivered with the need to escape. The laughter grew louder, mingling with the sound of the crashing waves, twisting into a cacophony of terror. The shadows began to writhe at my feet, curling around my ankles like grasping fingers. "Help!" I whispered, feeling utterly alone, my voice swallowed by the oppressive night. I felt alive in a way I had never wanted. The brief spark of hope flickered and died, leaving only despair. Suddenly, the air thickened, and the temperature dropped. I could see my breath puffing out in desperate clouds, each exhale a plea for salvation. "Please, I see you." The voice was a silken caress that scraped against my mind, resonating within me like a memory half remembered. It matched the laughter, a perfect symphony of malevolence. "And you are late." I blinked, the world spinning as I steadied my gaze on the figure, now only feet away. Its face, oh, the face, was a jumbled mess, an amalgam of familiar features stolen from faces I never knew. Eyes wide, grinning wide, lips stretching impossibly far across a face that seemed to shift in and out of reality. Suddenly, everything snapped into focus, emptiness filled the beach, the laughter ringing hollow. Where were my friends? I tore my gaze from the monstrosity, glancing around frantically. The darkness was deepening, shadows creeping closer, closing off my escape. Fear paralyzed me again, leaving me desperately searching for a place to hide my growing terror. A flicker of movement caught my eye at the edge of the beach, a group of figures moving sluggishly towards me. I squinted, hope igniting like a spark amidst the darkness, but as they got nearer, my heart plummeted. They were not my friends, no, not at all. Their faces were as pale as the moon, eyes sunken deep, reflecting nothing but emptiness. They moved like marionettes controlling their strings, jerky and uncoordinated. "Join us," one of them rasped, and the sound sent waves of ice racing down my spine. "Run!" I shrieked, but the words fell on deaf ears. The more I yelled, the closer they drew. The laughter swelled again, echoing in my mind, an invitation woven from snares, pulsing like the tide. I turned back to the twisted figure, rage boiling inside me, blurring the edges of my fear. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, pushing against the inexorable pull of dread that threatened to consume me. The figure leaned closer, its breath hot and foul. "The door is open. Come play." The shadows loomed heavy over me, and as I faltered, stepping backward, I stumbled into deeper darkness, a void from which I knew I might never escape. Just before I could regain my footing, the ground beneath slipped away, and the world tilted. I fell into the void, the laughter crescendoing above me like a funeral dirge. The last thing I saw was the vacant faces of my friends circling around the door, their cries of invitation resounding in my mind. Then everything went black. And when the light returned, I wasn't alone anymore. The light flickered to life with a harshness that seared my retinas. I squinted into the brightness, blinking rapidly, panic clawing at my chest as a familiar chill raced down my spine. I was back on the beach, but it was different. Everything felt wrong. The air was thick with humidity, oppressive like a shroud wrapping around my body. The laughter that had once echoed so menacingly now simmered beneath the surface, a low growl that vibrated through the sand and rose up into my bones. I staggered to my feet, looking around for my friends, but the beach was almost entirely deserted. The skeletal remnants of our party decorations rustled in an unseen wind, a tension thick enough to cut. "Maya?" My voice trembled, swallowed by the rhythmic crash of waves. I took a step forward, feeling the crunch of the sandy shoreline as I moved. I looked up and saw the grotesque shape emerging again from the ink-black shadows. This time, it wore a different guise, a cast-off reflection of someone I recognized. My heart sank. It was resembling Maya, her eyes vacant, yet the smile stretching across her face twisted grotesquely against the backdrop of midnight. Shadows slithered in felonious patterns around her feet as she drifted closer. "Help us," she said, but the words were torn from her mouth as if she were a puppet on a string, the strings wound tight by invisible hands. "Maya? What happened to you?" I could barely manage to breathe. My heart raced, echoing in the silence like a war drum. The figure rounded the corner of the beach house, and I saw that it wasn't just Maya that shadowed the surf. More figures emerged, circling lazily in a mesmerizing rhythm. They moved together, an uncanny ballet of despair, each face a mockery of the people I once knew, a collage of their features twisted into expressions of longing and darkness. Their eyes held a depth that chilled me to my marrow. "Join us," they sang, their voices a haunting melody that churned in the depths of the soul. A pit of dread erupted in my stomach. The shadows grew denser, pressing in from all sides. I stumbled backward, looking toward the beach house, hoping for some semblance of safety. The door hung ajar, as if beckoning me to enter. But the figures, now fully formed with the absence of color, blocked my approach. Each breath I took grew more labored as icy fingers of fear seized my throat. "What do you want from me?" My voice trembled, quaking under the weight of their unrelenting stares. "You belong with us," Maya croaked, her voice now a warbling echo of itself. She reached out a skeletal hand, the shadowy essence that filled her portion twisting violently in the air. "We are waiting." The laughter returned, more demanding this time, an ominous chant that poured from the shadows, overtaking the beacon of terror pulsating from the beach house. The night grew heavy around me, each breath slipped between my lips like soot. In that moment, I caught glimpse of something moving beneath the sands, an undulation, a burrowing, as if the beach itself were alive, parts of it longing to rise and envelop me. The laughter turned into whispers, creeping closer, invoking secrets older than the wind that whispered through the palms. Suddenly, the shadowy figures lunged forward, their movements quickening, the coldness spilling over me like water filling a vessel. I turned to run back to the beach house, but the figure that resembled Maya blocked my path, her grin stretching impossibly wide, revealing teeth that glistened like shards of glass. "Late for the party," she hissed, each syllable coated in the salt of my tensions. With nowhere to escape, I lunged for the open door, my hands grasping the cool metal, but the world shifted. The floor beneath me caved as the dark power of the void beneath the surface pulled harder. My screams were drowned out by their laughter as I was dragged into the vortex of shadow, a scream disintegrating into the night. Then, just as suddenly, the ground stilled. I was suspended in a void disconnected from time, sound, and light. The shadows whispered secrets in a language I could not comprehend, curling around me with tendrils grasping for my heart. And then I saw them, the faces of my friends fully formed, but devoid of emotion or color, hovering just beyond my reach. They gestured towards me, beckoning to join them, the darkness growing deeper, swirling like a tempest, calling me home. "Join us," they echoed, and as I felt my heartbeat slow, drowning under their song, I realized the truth: the party was just beginning. In the suffocating silence, a frail echo of dread pulsed against the fabric of the void, time folding in on itself like discarded paper. I thought of my friends, of Maya, of everything that had led me to this wretched coastline where the living and the dead intertwined. I clenched my fists, fighting against the approach of inevitability that promised to consume me whole. "Stay away!" I screamed, though my voice felt insipid against the overwhelming presence threatening to girdle me in darkness. I could feel the pull of those familiar faces, their stoicism a psychological trap baited by unfathomable despair. They twisted towards me in unison, their features distorted yet hauntingly beautiful in their tragedy, yearning for my acceptance, begging for my surrender. The distorted form of Maya smiled wider, her lips peeling back like the bark of a sun-bleached tree. "You know you want to come back," she whispered, a silken, insidious caress threading through my ear with a languid cadence that sent shivers racing down my spine. The words wrapped around me, squeezing tighter as they blended with the inky shadows swirling nearby, the tendrils brushing against my skin like the touch of a lover long lost. "No. I want tea," I cried, forcing myself to push against the spectral beings, breathing heavily as their palpable weight pressed against my spirit. I focused on the world I had come from, the laughter, the warmth of the sun, the freedom of life. But just as quickly, every thought was drenched in chilling darkness as I felt the tightening of unseen ropes around my chest, crushing the last flickers of resolve, slowly unraveling what remained of my will. Their voices harmonized into one collective scream, a soul-piercing blend of torment that slashed through the very marrow of my bones. "The party never ends. They cried in an uproarious chorus of agony mixed with delirium, a haunting melody that echoed across the void, swirling around me as the shadows lunged to ensnare me in their embrace. Suddenly, a flicker of light pierced through the shroud of dark, an incandescent glow blossoming just beyond the spectral forms, dancing like a ghostly glowworm demanding my attention. It was a shard of hope rising from the depths of despair. As it drew nearer, the shadows began to recoil, hissing in a cacophony of discontent, thrumming ominously, fueled by the desperation flickering within me. I propelled myself toward the light. The ethereal glow warred against the darkness, illuminating the faces of my friends, but these were not the eyes of those who had succumbed to the abyss. These were the eyes of the living, of truth and pain and hope urging me to escape. But just as I thought I might grasp that flicker of salvation, a form lunged toward me from the darkness, a grotesque mouth opening wide. The shadows coalesced toward that nightmarish maw, revealing teeth sharper than daggers, all teeth that crackled with a vibrancy that exclaimed, "No escape." I felt my heart slam against my ribs as the cold grip of despair clamped around my throat. The very fabric of the void twisted, straining against my will to survive, and the faces of my friends began to fade, replaced by desperate shadows encroaching upon my senses. The last sound was an anguished wail, my own. I threw my hands forward, grasping for the shimmer of hope as it shimmered further away, the shadows closing in on me like predators ready to pounce. "Stay with us," I heard Maya's voice echo, but as her features became indistinguishable from the dark, the light extinguished in a blink. Then everything went white. I gasped as I found myself gasping on the cool floorboards of the beach house, heart racing, clothes clammy with sweat. My mind raced as shards of clarity cut through the fog, mingling memories and fears. But the room felt different, too still, too quiet, like it held its breath, waiting for something. The door creaked open slowly, an ominous wind sweeping through the frame, chilling the air to ice. I strained to hear, pushing myself up, the nervous hum of my blood thrumming in my ears. Then, a soft giggle floated in, delicate yet tainted, a musical note laced with the promise of decay. "Maya?" I called fearfully into the dark hallway. The shadows lengthened around me, creeping, alive with a sentience I couldn't quite grasp. And then, in the distance, I heard her voice again, sweetly mocking, rising up just enough to reach me. "You thought you could leave?" Before I could process the meaning of her words, the lights began to flicker again. This time, I knew they would not cease. As the shadows descended, I backed away, the walls tightening like a prison, fragments of laughter seeping through the dimness, echoing the words of my friends in a symphony of madness. Something stepped from the darkness behind me, and I turned, my heart plummeting into a chasm of dread as I was met with the writhing form of a shadow now taking shape. One towering figure filled the doorway, its smile impossibly wide, a mirror to time lost, a remnant come to life. Bursting forth, the laughter intensified, and as I gasped, trapped between fear and existential horror, the last line echoed through the house, "The party hasn't even started." The darkness thickened, wrapping around me like an unwanted embrace. The laughter echoed off the walls, reverberating through the wood like malice imprinted in the very structure of the house. I stumbled backwards, my feet slipping on the cool floor, the urge to flee battling with the paralyzing grip of fear. The figure before me rippled, undulating as if it were a living shadow. Its grin stretched impossibly wide, and I could see a glimmer of something within that abyss, the reflection of my own terror mirrored back at me. My heart raced, the beat pounding in my ears like a funeral dirge, each thump a countdown to my inevitable demise. "Join us," the shadow crooned, the voice thick with sinister seduction. "Why resist the everlasting fun? Don't you remember? We were meant to be together forever." The words wove themselves into a haunting lullaby of despair and longing that threatened to lull me into submission. Images of the beach, of laughter, of that fateful night crashing back into my mind. Maya's laughter mingled with a mix of too many drinks and wild abandon. I had thought we were invincible, that our youth would defy the limits of mortality. Yet here I was, confronted by the embodiment of my decay, an echo of my past twisted into something grotesque. "Stop!" I gasped, forcing my voice out against a rising tide of panic. I turned once more to the deepening corridor, desperately seeking an escape. the door to freedom lay ominously ajar, as if beckoning me into the consuming shadows outside. But wouldn't the darkness out there be just as deadly? Shouldn't I face what was in front of me rather than succumb to what might lurk beyond? Yet as the shadows inched closer, tendrils of darkness reaching with greedy intent, I felt the air become thick with the scent of salt the sea. A sudden realization made my skin prickle. I had left the ocean behind. This was not just a house, this was a trap, a secluded cage built upon the lost energy of my friends, a mausoleum of memories seeking to engulf me whole. You need to come out and play, the shadow chuckled, its laughter warping into a false euphoria, captivating yet horrific. I could see the faint outline of other figures, their forms hovering at the edge of my vision, eyes glistening with malevolent mirth. What once had been joyful, carefree faces now appeared drained of life, a parody of the friends whose lives had been stolen by the very festivity they called liberation. The flickering lights morphed as if the house itself was caught in some nightmarish dance, each flicker illuminating the grafted specters, the remnants of the party forever frozen in their grotesque leer. Maya's face was among them, her eyes devoid of warmth, an obsidian depth that shrieked with a lost soul's torment. "Help us," her voice wavered, the word twisting like a knife. "Why don't you want to help us?" The other figures echoed her plea, an agonizing symphony of whispers that clawed at my sanity, pressing deep into the recesses of my mind that I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block them out, trying to gather the shattered pieces of my resolve. "You're not my friends. You're not them," I shouted, conviction igniting a flicker of defiance. "You're just shadows." The shadows recoiled momentarily, a collective shudder rippling through their forms, as if my denial had momentarily thrust them into disarray. The air hummed around me, thickening with tension as clarity seeped through. But before I could seize that clarity, the laughter surged again, a tidal wave crashing through the fragmented walls of the room. "No one believes you, you fool." They danced closer, twisting into a cacophony of shrieks and giggles, a symphony of sadism and suffering intertwining with the soft cadence of sorrow. In a desperate lunge, I turned toward the door, the threshold to the outside world just a few frantic steps away. But as I raced forward, a blinding flash enveloped me. A figure appeared, a mirror image, exactly like me, but with eyes that glinted with an otherworldly brightness. "Don't leave just yet," it sang, a voice both alluring and menacing, freezing me in place. "The real party is about to start." The radiant threat loomed large, and the darkness inside the house began to churn and pulse with intensity. I felt my breath hitch, awareness crystallizing that my heart was not just racing out of fear but something else entirely. A warmth surged within me, a peculiar hunger clawing for release. Suddenly, the house shuddered, and the walls whispered secrets long forgotten. "You can stay with us, forever," they echoed as they pulsed in rhythm with my pounding heart, the darkness obscuring my escape, and then, without warning, the lights flickered for the last time, plunging me back into that horrific abyss. My own reflection grinned at me from the shadows. Each cascade of laughter was joined by a voice, an unmistakable guttural longing creeping through the silence, and it became glaringly evident that I was still not alone. "Welcome back," it sang, that horrific familiarity curling around every nerve like a vine, binding me to this cursed party that had only just begun. The silence that enveloped me this time was thick as fog, clinging to my skin like a shroud. The malevolent figure hovered close, entangling me with its darkness as the remnants of the house succumbed to a grave stillness. My heart thudded heavily in the silence, the shadows curling closer, whispering sinister secrets layered beneath layers of dread. "Why fight it, Emma?" My double's voice was an eerie echo, sweetened by the sharp bite of something rancid. "You're finally home. There's nothing out there for you anymore. This is where joy knows no limits. Embrace it." From behind the inky veil, the specters shifted again, their grotesque faces lit by some unseen source, trapped in a perpetual grin, their hollow eyes void of life. Each corner of the room seemed to compress, walls inching closer as though the house resented my resistance. "Is this really home?" I murmured, feeling both the weight of hopelessness and fleeting adrenaline. The oppressive atmosphere thickened, and as I swayed slightly, the ground beneath felt like it was shifting, a slow undulation, like a heartbeat. Then came the sound, a soft crack, like ice splintering. I turned slowly, fastening my gaze to the ornate mirror hanging on the wall. Its surface shimmered unsettlingly, warped as if breathing. What was reflected was not just my face. Shadows swirled around my image, grotesque parodies of the lives I cherished, bodies that had danced carefree now frozen in grotesque stillness, eyes forever gazing toward the unknown, the laughter warped into a chilling cacophony, morphing into cries of pain, my friends' voices melding with the whispers clinging to the darkness. We were so close, Emma, so close to being whole again. Save us. The echoes swelled, sharp like knives, cutting through my resolve. In that moment, I was overcome by a surge of memories, a celebration gone awry, the thrill of youth twisted into the grotesque tapestry of my fate. I had tried so hard to forget the events that clouded our final spring break, our fleeting brush with danger that ended in tragedy. But now those memories came flooding back, and with them, the truth gnawed at me. It was my choice that had led to their demise. Join us, the reflection cooed, lips curling into that grotesque smile that mirrored the shadow's delight. Don't you want to be whole again? We can be a family, forever. I felt the ground beneath my feet tremble, and the walls throbbed with an otherworldly pulse, a resonant sound that seemed to synchronize with my rapid heartbeat. Their cries morphed into a dissonant harmony, each plea cutting deeper into the fabric of my shattered psyche. Whoever this is, whatever you are, you're lying. I screamed, holding my ground against the growing press of darkness, my fists clenched tight in defiance. You're not real. You're just a manifestation of my guilt. But even as I said it, doubt gnawed at my insides. Would I truly be free if I left? Could I bear to pass through that door and into the unforgiving night, the empty world beyond? The shadows screeched, their voices intertwining in a spectral chorus of wrath. You cannot deny who you are. My double stepped closer, its face shimmering between the terrifying familiarity and the otherworldly alien, both inviting and reproachful. You possessed the fire to set them free. And now, their thirst fuels me. Suddenly, the floor erupted beneath me with a violent crack, and in a rush of horror, I was thrown back, clattering to the ground. The mirror shattered, shards flying through the air like shards of fractured reality. I winced as glass grazed my skin, but the pain was overshadowed by the chaotic surge of power emanating from the broken reflection. From the remnants, shadows spiraled upward, mixing with vivid colors until a scene emerged, a tableau of the last night at the beach. The figures danced again, vibrant and alive, yet a sinister twist crept into the celebration. I saw myself, laughing with Maya, the chill of impending doom cloaked beneath a veil of joy, a serpent among the blossoms. Come back, Emma, her voice beckoned, layered with desperation. You know what we need. You were the spark that lit this fire. I struggled against the rising tide of shadows, breathing hard, the memories clawing at my sanity. The room began to swirl, colors bleeding into one another as the echo of laughter evolved into something deeper, darker. I could feel the ground quake beneath me, the darkness swirling violently. The spirits reached out, arms stretching toward me, a desperate grasp that tugged at every thread of my being. Help us! They wailed, their collective anguish piercing through the veil of shock. The house shuddered, wooden beams creaking as if in reaction to the surge of energy sprawling from the fragments of memory, and as the shadows lunged, a surge of dread gripped me. I could see my friends' faces morphing into something far more ominous, ancient horror unraveling in Ouroboros of laughter and sorrow blurring the line between the past and the present. I was losing myself, running headlong into a void. Then, without warning, the floor yawned open beneath me like a gaping maw. I felt myself falling deeper into a world of light and shadow, my screams swallowed by the abyss. The last thing I saw was my double-S gleeful grin as reality warped beyond recognition, the darkness stretching out to envelop me whole, and then, silence. The void released me, spitting me out onto a cold, uneven surface. I found myself sprawled on a floor made of earth, damp and slick. The air here was stale, heavy with the acrid scent of decay, and echoes of the house's haunting call burgeoned like unseen armies creeping through the dark that I struggled to stand, blinking rapidly to adjust to the faint light that surrounded me. The walls were rough-hewn stone, clammy to the touch, and the ceiling arched into a shadowy expanse above. As far as my eyes could discern, I was trapped in a tunnel, endlessly winding, lost below the very house from which I had just tumbled. Shadows danced along the walls, moving against the grain, as if alive. My pulse quickened, each thud reverberating in the eerie silence that followed my arrival. Where was I? The remnants of the house had transported me to some unseen hell. Emma, a voice called, distant yet undeniably familiar, penetrating through the suffocating dark. Come play with us. I froze, heart hammering in my chest as fear seized me. The sound echoed, though I could not tell the direction. It felt like a cruel game, teasing me with memories yet reshaping them into something dreadful. I held my breath and strained my ears, waiting to hear more. A shuffling noise emerged from deeper within the tunnel, dragging against the uneven earth. I crouched low, heart racing. As I pressed against the wall, the shadows coalesced, panting with anticipation. Do you not recognize your friends? The voice twisted, a human melody warped by the claws of desperation. They are waiting for you, Emma. Come. The whispers slithered through the darkness, wrapping around me like a chilling embrace. I inched forward, torn by a grotesque impulse to follow the sounds of familiarity pulling me toward the void. A few anguished steps forward, and I stumbled into a hollow chamber where a sickly light flickered and dimmed. In the center of the space lay a circle marked starkly with chalk, twisting symbols I couldn't decipher. And there, trapped within the circle, were the figures of my friends, pale and translucent, their eyes gleaming with a haunting pain. Maya? I uttered, aghast, feeling as if I had been plunged into an ancient curse. She stood, her arms reaching out helplessly, as if the chalk prevented her from breaking free. What happened? Emma, we need you. Please. Her voice cracked, burgeoning with a sorrow that echoed through my very soul. You must break the circle. I rushed to the edge, desperate to free them, but the circle pulsated with energy, vibrating angrily as I approached. Faint images flickered above them, fragments of our final moments together replaying in surreal shadows. Laughter turned to screams, joy twisted into terror, an endless loop of regret poisoning the air. Stay away. One of my other friends wailed, dread spiraling through the atmosphere like a festering wound. You don't understand what's at stake. It's not just us, it's the house. If you step in, it will claim you too. I hesitated, a gale of indecision battling inside me. The walls of the tunnel seemed to lean closer, the air thickening as the oppressive weight of darkness grew. The light sputtered, gapingly revealing sinister talons creeping toward my friends, and I could feel the vibrations of the sinister presence drawing near, a low hum reverberating against the stones. Help us. They pleaded, voices melding into a symphony of despair. I felt my heart tearing in two, each beat echoing their pleas. But a gnawing sensation knotted in my stomach, an unsettling truth weaving through my consciousness. To break the circle, could it be that easy? Or would it serve only to unleash the dark malevolence festering inside the house, courting madness like a lover? The moment stretched thin, suffocated under the weight of the decision that loomed before me. Finally, breathless and trembling, I clasped my hands together. What if I do it? What happens? Are you truly free? Or the air crackled, an energy pulsing through the walls as the howl of desperation drew closer. In a heartbeat, the room stilled, silence. Settling heavily and breaking only as something drew near, forcing shadows through the entrance of the tunnel. Suddenly, quaking laughter erupted around me. A cacophony of joy and malice warred for dominance as the room shifted, shadows rising to shape themselves into something grotesque, an amalgamation of all my fears, sharp teeth gnashing in anticipation. And there, in the flickering light, I caught a glimpse of the thing I had become, my reflection, twisted and grinning, lips curling back in delight while my friends trembled in terror. Join us, Emma, my own voice hissed, echoing through the chamber as darkness began to coalesce, reaching for me with a seductive dance. That I took a trembling step back, dread consuming me as I realized that the choice was mine. But as time stretched thin in that moment of realization, I realized the truth: the house never let go. A chilling scream erupted from Maya, the shadows consuming her in a wild surge. The others followed as the whispering darkness surrounded me, snatching them back into the abyss of the house, their pleas fading into anguished silence. And then an iron grip clamped around my throat, wrenching me from behind into the suffocating embrace of the void. As the edges blurred and shadow swallowed my world, the last thing I saw was my friend's screams entwined with laughter, the house sealing its grip upon the remnants of my soul. And all that remained was darkness. Cold seeping through my skin had morphed into a numbing presence as I tumbled through the void, choking on despair while spectral laughter reverberated around me like a cruel lullaby. An eternity felt like it slipped away before reality splintered and I found myself sprawled on the damp earth once more, yet something was different. The tunnel flickered, casting strange, elongated shadows that jutted around me like gnarled fingers desperate to ensnare. I fought to stand, my heart a thundering beast, but the moment I gripped the earthy floor to push myself up, a slithering sensation traced up my spine, icy fingers wrapping themselves around my waist. The entities in the darkness felt alive, breathing, whispering promises of havoc and wonder. I gasped as the pressure intensified, tightening like a noose. "Don't run away, Emma. We're just starting to play," the voice chimed once more, infusing the air with a sickly sweet tone that felt like warm honey trickling down icy skin. Shadows writhed along the walls, dancing to an unseen rhythm, tantalizing in their relentless pursuit. "Let go!" I shrieked, clawing at the air. Nothing but thick darkness greeted my frantic gestures. Panic tore at my insides as the shadows contorted into scenes from our previous days, Maya laughing, her infectious joy filling the air with light, and then the schism of terror, the night spiraling as we found ourselves ensnared in the house's grasp. The grotesque transformation tugged at my mind like a taunting whisper, the blurred line between shame and horror merging. I stumbled deeper into the grotesque tunnel, panting, desperate to escape. But the voices persisted, threading through the dank air. "You can't leave. You belong to us. You never did know how to play alone," they sang, twisting my memories into a baited hook. A flicker of light prickled against the walls ahead, a doorway, perhaps? Or another illusion laid by the darkness to ensnare me further? My gut told me to flee, yet an overwhelming sense of longing compelled me to approach, inching toward its luminescent promise. As I stepped into the glow, reality twisted again. I emerged into what appeared to be a theater crafted from rusted metal and rotting wood, the cracked walls cloaked in suffocating shadows. Seats carved from heavy stone rose to my sides, and on the stage, flickering like a dying ember, was an image, a projection of me, spine arched backward in a painful, mocking pose, surrounded by darkness. "Welcome to your show," the voice crooned, soft and inviting yet laced with sharp edges. It felt like a trick, an illusion designed to entrap. But still, I was drawn forward, unable to break free. The stage repeated morbid scenes of my friend's last moments, chaotic flashes of terror morphing into grotesque reenactments. I watched as their entrapped forms twisted, shadows creeping over their bodies, consuming them in a hungry ballet of despair. My heart lurched with each scream, my own reflection wavering in the projection, a grinning figure clad in a shroud of malignancy. "It's time to act," said the voice, now burrowing into my thoughts, piercing their way into the marrow of my bones. "Enter the scene or be trapped in silence forever." With horror embedding itself in my heart, I hesitated, feeling an electric charge ripple through my skin as the shadows urged me forward. I knew why they wanted me. They craved my dread, my fear, a feast that only I could provide. A violent surge of instinct ignited as I surged toward the stage. "No! I want to play your sick games!" I screamed, but the light pulsed, flickering with the force of a dying sun, and suddenly, darkness engulfed me again, pulling me into the very heart of the macabre performance. As I was thrust into the front row of my own twisted play, the shadows consumed me, wrapping tightly around my limbs. The audience of shadows jeered, their eyes gleaming with disembodied hunger as they leaned closer, anticipation sharp in the air. In the midst of it all, the central figure turned, the very shadow of myself, eyes glimmering with a malevolent light, grinning wider than any face should. "Oh, Emma. Must we teach you the rules again?" A flare of realization ignited as the stage sparked with life. My friends' cries echoed around me, real and agonizing. The truth crashed over me like a violent wave. I was to be both performer and spectator, bound in relentless cycles of horror. Their spirits remained tethered to my existence, and only I could break the tie, but with every scream that echoed, a dark, joyous laughter crept into the corners of the theater, a sound that cackled with promise and malignant delight. The shadows enveloped me, blurring the lines of my own identity, leaving shards of my spirit aching to be free. But free to what? The twisted version of myself pivoted, extending an arm in invitation toward the churning blackness. "Embrace it, Emma, join us in eternal remembrance." And as the grotesque encore of my friends' haunted faces shimmered before me, I felt the slithering touch of the shadows weaving tighter around my throat, and I could see oily tendrils emerging from the void, reaching for me, ready to yank me back into their embrace. "Join us, join us," they chanted, as the abyss called my name in twisted harmony, and I found myself teetering on the precipice of annihilation, breath clawing at my throat in a desperate gasp. But somewhere in it all there was a flicker of hope. The tiniest fragment of defiance that a decision awaited, one that could plunge me into the abyss or perhaps, just perhaps, lead to salvation. And then the shadows converged, eclipsing the fragile light of hope. The darkness roared as the shadows tightened their grasp, the frigid air vibrating with a sinister energy. My heart rattled within my chest, a metronome marking the passing moments of dread. The cries of my friends grew louder, distorting into a cacophony of terror that clawed at the corners of my mind. For every scream, the twisted projection of myself twisted joyously, throwing its head back in laughter, contemplating the allure of my imminent surrender. "Embrace it, Emma. The shadows know you," the mocking reflection cooed, its features strobing like a broken film reel. The audience of darkness swayed, entrapped by the gruesome performance unfolding before them, faceless spectators intoxicated by my plight. That I felt an icy fear crackling through me, racing up from my toes and exploding in my heart, fighting against the suffocating gloom. The shadows whispered secrets, soft and chilling, promising power, revenge, everything I had ever desired. But it also promised the eternal torment of my friends, forever trapped within their eddies of despair. Could I shoulder the burden, watching them suffer as I was offered my own twisted version of existence? "Think, Emma." A fleeting voice cut through the haze like a shard of glass. It was Maya's voice, the courage that kindled memories of laughter and shared resolve in the face of darkness. Although agonized and tethered to this abyss, I could hear it. Faint but insistent. "I won't betray you," I cried out, the words spilling from my lips, igniting a fleeting spark of defiance that flickered against the encroaching shadows. But the laugh grew, a horrid crescendo, merging with the painful wails of my friends. The apparition of myself pivoted, narrowing its menacing eyes, a grotesque parody of my own soul. "Oh, but you already have, haven't you? You made your choice when you stepped inside this house." It lunged toward me, and in that chilling moment, I saw it reflected in those soulless depths was a truth I had been unwilling to confront for too long. To escape, I had to acknowledge my powerlessness without them. I couldn't just run, I had to confront the reservoir of darkness festering in my own heart. "Take her," I cried to the darkness, pointing toward the shadow specter that wore my face, heart racing with both sacrifice and determination. "If you want me, take me. But let them go." A momentary silence draped over the theater, as if the very air held its breath. The phantoms froze, their writhing forms quivering with anticipation, while the projection faltered, flickering between me and the darkness. It recoiled, then twisted into an animalistic snarl, revealing jagged teeth that dripped with shimmering malice. Shadows danced and flared, reeling from my outburst, before converging around me. "Brave words from a coward," it spat, and at that moment, the shadows lunged at me, akin to ravenous wolves baying for their kill. "You can't save them, Emma. They're lost, just like you." But as teeth gnashed and claws scraped against my skin, I envisioned Maya, her laugh brightening the darkest days, and the dear warmth of friendship amidst chaos. No, I couldn't lose her. The rejection of this fate coursed through my veins, igniting the buried ember of rebellion flickering inside me. Enough! I screamed, the command ripping through the seething silence like thunder. I extended both arms into the void, feeling the chaotic energy surrounding me. If you want a performance, let it be one of truth. I will not bow to your darkness. A sudden shockwave resonated from my declaration, reverberating against the walls of the theater. The shadows flared, swirling in a cyclone of rage and confusion. I sensed their hesitance, their influence wavering. The laughter turned jagged, echoing in fits and starts, disoriented by the unexpected turbulence I created. Then, a blinding light burst forth from my chest, illuminating the dark, forcing back the tendrils clawing at me. And for just a breath of a moment, I saw them, the faces of Maya, Jason, and Kayla flickering in the unfurling light that spilled from within, their eyes wide with cautious hope. Perhaps this was the key, but suddenly, the shadows wrapped around my resistance, squeezing tighter until my breath became a jagged gasp. Join us! They shrieked, the hunger in their voices hitting a fever pitch. Rooms began spinning, and static electricity crackled in the air as I was torn between dimensions, caught in a violent riptide of despair and longing. As I fought against the chaos, I could feel the very fabric of the theater shredding around me, and just as I was nearly swallowed by the abyss, a chilling whisper brushed against my ear, thin as a razor's edge, "You'll never escape this dance." Then an explosion of darkness yanked at me. The ground beneath me collapsed, and with a final scream, I slipped into the void once more, the memories of my friends swirling away from my grasp, fading like ghosts lost in the never-ending night. But I was not alone. The laughter echoed all around me, mocking and hypnotic, as I plummeted into the darkness only to feel a cold hand wrap around mine, pulling me deeper, and then everything went black. The first thing I registered was the cold. It slithered through my skin, a bitter embrace that told me I was no longer trapped in that accursed beach house but somewhere infinitely worse. I opened my eyes to the dim light of a musty chamber, damp and foreboding. Shafts of moonlight managed to pierce the shadows, flickering eerily like ghosts daring me to linger. The ground was uneven, and as my senses began to clear, I caught the unmistakable echoes of despair, faint whispers weaving in and among the dark corners of the room. My heart thudded in my chest, an urgent drum announcing a dreadful reality. I was not alone. I stumbled into some twisted mausoleum of memories. The very air felt heavy, charged, as if the walls were holding their breath waiting for me to make a misstep. "Maya?" I croaked, voice barely a whisper, and the shadows tightened like coils around me. A memory sliced through the fog. Her face, twisted and marred by that laughter, my friends' faces slipping from my grasp like sand through fingers. I felt their pain, but now, there was only silence. Suddenly, a soft giggle floated by, mechanical and hollow. It resounded from the very walls, a mockery of familiarity. I turned, instinctively aware that every shadow was a potential threat, every creak and moan was alive with the promise of the unknown. Come out, wherever you are," the mocking resonance called softly, wrapping its icy fingers around me like a lover's caress. "You were never meant to leave." The rhythm of the house echoed my own panic, a swelling of energy, slick and dark advancing, igniting an instinct deep within me to run, but where to? The tunnel felt endless, folding back on itself like a serpent swallowing its tail, a maze reflecting every vile part of my own soul. The darkness closed in, weaving intricate patterns where sanity dared not tread. It was an architect of fear, an entanglement of confusion as the walls shimmered and shifted, and then I saw them. Shadows at the edge of my vision, figures writhed and coalesced until they took on the semblance of my friends. It was a nightmarish mockery, hollow eyes glistening with an otherworldly appeal. "Join us, Emma," they beckoned, voices twining as if each syllable were dipped in honey, sickly sweet yet laced with the venom of betrayal. They began to sway, an exquisite dance tugging on the frayed edges of my mind. Was I wrong to even consider their plea? It felt so familiar, yet so wrong. "I can't!" I exclaimed, shaking my head violently. But in truth, panic clawed at my throat. There was something tangible about their presence, tugging at the wound of guilt festering inside me, a dance of memories waiting to consume me whole. Come, Maya's voice echoed, all traces of warmth stripped away like paint from a weary wall. We can be whole again. We are never truly apart. Stop! I shouted, my voice a pitiful echo in the churning chaos. It was an impossible plea, caught under the weight of their mournful eyes that seemed to hold a promise we could never retrieve, a bond forged in fear but stained with ambition. I staggered back, chest tight as vertigo warred with the desperate need to escape this prison of reflection. You cannot escape what you are, Emma, the figures whispered, their words a velvet purr entwined with malice. You wanted this. To feel our pain again. No. In that moment, clarity pierced through the panic, a flash of understanding ignited within me. Their anguish was mine, their loss mirrored my betrayal of our once vibrant friendship. The shadows faded momentarily, shifting as if assessing my every move, and I seized the opportunity to flee down the corridor, my heart clamoring for life. No escape, they chorused, laughter echoing behind me as if I were a moth trapped within a flame. Come back. You wanted to play. The walls began to thrum with a terrible energy, shadows writhing, pulsating in sync with my frantic heartbeat. I raced ahead, deeper through the oppressive darkness, only for the corridor to bend, twisting, creating an infinite loop that pulled me back towards them. Then I stumbled into a clearing, a grand expanse stretching before me, a cavern of despair adorned with shimmering reflections of the past. It was here the shadows coalesced into something coherent, an amalgamation of lost friendships and embers of laughter turned sour, and then I saw it, a mirror of sorts, pulsating with energy, reflecting not just my outside, but the very marrow of my being. The visions danced chaotically, showing moments I wished I could erase, each joy mixed with terror. They twisted into a grotesque mosaic, a reflection of regret. Maya, I cried out, voice naked in the stifling air. I never wanted to forget. I just wanted to survive. Did you think it was ever about survival? The laughter echoed, and an amalgamation of memories surged forth, an onslaught of faces, voices, lost in endless revelry. Survival is a game and you are losing. And in that instant, the mirror shimmered violently, distorting, revealing a path, a door framed by shadows, thick and inviting, whispering promises of escape. But the laughter grew louder, drowning everything else, seeking to consume my resolve. Join us, Emma. They cried in unison, a siren song that resonated with everything I had lost. It floated deeper than the stolen hearts, the desire for unity in madness. As I teetered on the precipice of despair, I clenched my fists, unyielding against the tide of shadows closing in, the familiar ache of my friends echoing within. No, no more. I shouted defiantly, planting my feet firmly on the ground, allowing every fiber of anger and sorrow to swell within me. I will not be your prisoner. You can't take what I didn't destroy, not again. The shadows flickered, hesitating, confusion flaring among their cacophony. For a moment, just a moment, I felt the precarious balance shift. With that surge, I plunged towards the mirror, reaching for the sliver of light beyond, the chance to confront the truth that lingered, to reorder the shadows. You want my pain? You'll have to face it. The world crashed around me with a violent flare, shadows screaming to drown my defiance as the boundaries of reality warped, twisting me into oblivion. But before everything faded to black, I felt a tether, a pull that connected me to that other realm, to their cries, their lingering shadows. That I was falling, spiraling through the abyss, but pieces began to shift as light blurred the edges of my perception. I fought desperately against the crushing weight of the darkness that sought to reclaim me, feeling their faint calls echo like rippling water through my mind. Emma, don't let them win. Suddenly, the final screams morphed into one word, a plea sharper than any knife, echoing through the darkness: help. With that one cry echoing in the depths of my mind, I ripped through dimensional seams, bursting forth into the vastness of the real world, where sun and sky reigned. But I was alone. The beach was endless, a desolate stretch devoid of life. A scream tore through me as realization struck: my friends were gone. The echo of their laughter wrapped around me, a mournful serenade reminding me of my devastating choice. I fell to my knees, breath-catching, feeling the weight of their loss as the horizon swallowed the sun, leaving me cold against the growing darkness, and whispers began anew, swirling around me like a tempest of familiar voices, weaving through the wind. You could have saved us, but this game isn't over. As the shadows began to take shape once more, reminding me that I was still being watched, I felt despair claw deeper into my heart. In that moment, the final truth solidified, carving a jagged scar through my soul. I was not truly free. Their laughter echoed through the empty expanse, the promise of terror resounding in my heart. And as the haunting refrain danced around me, I realized the chilling fate awaiting me. The party wasn't over, it was just beginning. I could feel it in all my bones. The darkness would always linger. Even in the waking world.